share screen?
I haven't initiated it. Um,
Let's
if
see.
you ask me to share screen, I know I just have to accept that.
Yes, I will. Let's take a look here because I think we're actually live right now. Share screen. Here we go. All right. Do you see yourself?
I do.
Okay, perfect. Cool. And we got your little. I wish this little screen would go higher though. Share, show small active speaker video. No, we want a big one. Show grid video. There we go. All right, and I'm just gonna make sure that we are live here. I believe we are, but I want to make sure everybody can see us. One moment, and see there's your fancy picture there at
I
the.
should have given. It occurred to me afterwards I should have given you a less fancy picture.
No, that's great. That's right in line. Like you look like you're actually in the movie. Like you look like the fifth witch.
Aw, thank you. We were on the red carpet for Judy Garland's 100th birthday celebration in Los Angeles. And they were launching the Judy Garland fragrance that night. So it was a formal, red carpet event. It was kind of crazy.
That is so cool. Why a why a Judy Garland scent? What does Judy Garland smell like?
Well, apparently, like the Judy Garland fragrance by Vincenzo Spinato. So they actually used her perfume as the base, and they worked with her family. Liza Minnelli and Joey and Lorna Luft worked with them, and they came up with a scent that smelled. They say it smells like her. So
What an odd thing to have such a scent, like such a unique scent. People can remember it, and then they're like,
she
"Oh
was
yeah,
very into perfume. So I think it makes a lot of sense for her and for her fan base.
yeah." That's really funny. All right, well, I did find out we're live, and we got
Yeah,
some folks in here.
everybody.
Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to It's the Goose live chat with today's special guest, Victoria Calamito, or Tori as she prefers to be called. Hello, Tori. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
If things were going any better, I'd be embarrassed. You like that show busy answer?
I
Um,
love that show business answer. And I'm honestly so excited to talk about this show because it is such a forgotten gem.
yeah. So when I oh, and we have Marcus Blackwell, a regular here. Hello, everyone. I
Hi,
thought this would be
Marcus.
later tonight. Nope. Put the AM. Made sure to put the AM in the Eastern time. That's what I think confused a few people here because we got folks from all over the world and it's all over confusing. But hey, if you can't watch it now, you can watch it later. So yeah, so we were just talking about the cartoon, and before we get into that, I want to just kind of ask you because I purposely didn't want to have much contact with you before because I wanted to be surprised because obviously Wizard of Oz is, I mean, it's one of the like oldest like franchises that's been just done in every single medium, cartoons, plays, I mean, Pez dispensers. It's the most marketed. It seems like the most marketed thing in history.
It sure is. Speaking of the Pez dispenser, it
Are-
is. Yeah. And actually, that started right at the beginning. L. Frank Baum, who wrote the novel in 1900, he wrote a socialist utopia, but ironically, he was a capitalist with a capital C, and he was constantly finding ways to market and remarket his work. And he actually merchandised the books, which was unusual for the time. There were dolls and there were comic books and there were like all kinds of toys and games kids could buy. And then there was a stage play in 1902, and that sparked a whole nother round of marketing. So yeah, the Oz collecting side of it has been around for 123 years.
It's so odd to think because back in that time, you didn't really see a lot of adaptations of books or just any kind of media, really. Everything was just, this is an original play. Nothing was really adapted back in the day, which seems really strange now. But there wasn't also that much. Like there wasn't that much media to adapt from. I mean, you would have really old like stage plays or Shakespeare, but to have an original like from 1900, which what 150 years after the U.S. was basically around, it just seems like a very strange time as well to start adapting things. So how
Yeah.
was you were saying that he started merchandising and licensing, but how did he come to that, or did he approach studios or playwrights or companies, or did they approach him with it?
So L. Frank Baum was a jack of all trades, and actually, before he became an author, he was a playwright, and it was his idea to bring Oz to the stage. And he actually wrote a treatment for it, gave it to the production company he was working with. They read it and they're like, no. Because at that time, Broadway was featuring a lot of is kind of pre-vaudeville variety shows where it was more vignettes tied together very loosely, lots of chorus girls, it was really geared toward adults. So they rewrote his work. It resembles the book in almost no way. And that's one of the things I loved about Baum. He was not uptight about people taking his work and reinventing it, which is why when people now are kind of like, no more remakes, you can't touch the classic. I disagree strongly with that. Even the author was okay with us reworking his work for a new medium. So I'm actually really excited to see what the next generation brings to Oz.
And was there a reason why he had changed it so much from the original work? I mean, obviously you have to cut things out. You have to, a lot of it's descriptions in books, but a lot of, especially like just the various different kind of, immediately after the book was adapted to different mediums, a lot of it changed. And I don't know how much he had to do with each iteration of Oz when it came to, the movie but how much of a hand did he have in changing it? Like when they wrote the movie, like did he have any input? He was dead by then, right?
He was. So L. Frank Baum died in 1919, 20 years before MGM took a crack at it. And his family was involved in handing it over to them, but they didn't have a ton of creative control. But even after he passed, the publishing company appointed a new royal historian of Oz and allowed the Oz books to continue. So Oz is constantly revamping, reshaping, evolving. He didn't mind that at all. And, medium is the message, right? So if you're translating something from a book to the stage, that has to change in order for it to fit the medium. Wicked's another great example of this. Gregory Maguire's novel doesn't look anything like the Wicked stage play. And changing something from a book to a film or a play to a film, you have to adapt it to the medium that's telling the story. And animation is so wonderful in this way because it is boundless in terms of what can be done. There's no limitations. All you need is your imagination and a pencil.
And that's something that's very interesting about Oz, because you were saying about historians, and so I saw a little bit on your Instagram, which if you haven't seen it, go to the Oz vlog. Look, I'm just a casual Wizard of Oz fan, but I'm pretty sure I've scrolled through hours of your Instagram. It is just the most easy to watch, addicting thing, and I'm learning things that I never knew of, like that I actually like Wizard of Oz a lot. So it's just strange. So the Wizard of Oz historian you said it's passed down, I believe, right?
The Royal Historian of Oz title, which is the title L. Frank Baum gave himself as the author, after the first couple of books, because he only ever intended to write one Oz book, but as he went on, he framed it in the device that he was the royal historian and that Dorothy was actually sending him information from Oz to tell these stories. And when he passed, the title of Royal Historian of Oz was handed down to another author, Ruth Plumly Thompson. And that title just continued to pass down through all of the Oz authors. There are over 40 canonical Oz books. And if you Google that, you can find the order in which you should read them. So it just goes on. And those of us who call ourselves Oz historians are just, kind of experts in the area of knowing how all of this came to be.
So that's one of the most interesting things, though, that the Oz books continued without Baum, because you would think that just after he's done, because he wrote himself about, what was it, like 15, 19 books?
He wrote 14 full novels and one of short stories.
Yeah, so when it came to continuing it on, did he have a personal say in, I want this author to continue the story, or was it his family that gave creative permissions?
It was the publishing company that made the decision. He had actually written his last book. It was completed before he died, but it was not published until after. And then the conversation became, okay, what do we do here? Do we, is this the end of the story, or do we keep going? And they appointed Ruth Plumly Thompson after his passing to be the person to carry that forward.
And what a great legacy that is to have, and also such a burden. I mean, anytime you're taking over from any original author in any field, just if you're the next person, it seems very daunting. But maybe that was at a time where you could get away with that because people knew authors, like authors were sort of rock stars at the time. But also, I don't think they really cared who was writing the books as long as they saw that title, Wizard of Oz, whatever the next installment was.
And Baum was not precious about people taking it and moving on with it. But then again, when you look at Ruth Plumly Thompson's work, I wish they had appointed someone else. Her books are not my favorites. But what it did was it allowed Oz to continue being in the public consciousness. What people have forgotten about the Oz books is that they were the Harry Potter books of their time. They came out one a year. Kids clamored to know what happened next. The original book, though it's been banned several times, has never been out of publication in all of the 123 years. It's never ceased to be published. So it's a cultural phenomenon. It has continued to inspire so much creativity. And the MGM film really took that and then launched it into iconography.
Yeah, and so we had Baum, who was the original historian. So we have you now, who's a historian. So how do we get from that point? I mean, to be mentioned with anybody in that to have a similar title, that must be a huge honor.
It is a huge honor. And I should emphasize the unofficialness of that title. That title was given to me by a fellow Oz historian, Ryan J. of Ryan J. Reviews. He is an Oz historian who has worked with the International Wizard of Oz Club for a very long time. I've been a member since I was 9 years old. And he was the first person to refer to me in that way. And I was a little nervous to pick up that mantle and run with it. But then I was like, you know what? I kind of pulled from some confidence and decided, yes, okay, I'll run with this. And it's been an amazing journey thus far. It really has.
So what do you feel though? Because with that title, that's incredible. You said it's unofficial, but still, that's like the Queen of England, saying we're going to unofficially knight you. You can't kneel, but you can stand up. Like, it's still the same. Like, I'm being knighted here. Like, I have that title. Unofficial, so what? It's still got the word official in it. Historian. So what does that mean to you as far as carrying on this legacy of? Because what I do is I do retrospectives of cartoons. I don't like to say reviews because I'm not a critic. I don't have that kind of education. I do retrospectives. I think that it's not even preserving what I do, but I'm just letting people know I'm giving it a second life. And for you, I think you're doing something much more noble where you actually are preserving a history. It's sort of like this oral history where even though we have all this video and all this documentation, I think it's just as important, though, to have an actual passing down of knowledge from people. What does that mean to you to have that responsibility?
It's an honor, honestly. I've been a fan all of my life. I've been collecting now for 26 years, and it is an honor to pick up that mantle and walk with it and to bring more people into the fold, because I truly believe that even classics and things we love, if we are not careful to continue talking about it and keep it in the public consciousness, it will eventually be lost to time. And much like your cartoon retrospectives, which are bringing about a renaissance for these cartoons that have been long since shelved, it is a responsibility that I take very seriously to teach the history, talk about the importance of carrying this legacy forward. I think there's so much to be found in the Oz books, so much wisdom and wit. And, I don't want those things to go away. And the only way we keep them going is if we introduce them to the next generation. So that's where I feel my responsibility really lies. Educating, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about Oz as well, and helping to carry the legacy forward to the next generation.
Yeah, it's so great. And I want to start getting into the cartoon a little bit because we have people who are chomping at the bit asking you questions that I love. So let's go ahead and get to just a couple comments in here. Marcus Blackwell says, let's see here. Question about the lore of Oz. We will get to that one, Marcus. But Marcus does say, not only are you preserving history, you're keeping the lore alive as well. Which... Aww. Yeah, that's something that you don't really think about because, especially when I rewatched the original Wizard of Oz, and I guess we can kind of segue into that. The original Wizard of Oz, I think people have, they see it once or twice as a kid and they have this idea of what it is. And I had the same thing. I remember Somewhere Over the Rainbow, um, just going down the yellow brick road. I remember a lot of the beats, a lot of the stronger points. But what I didn't realize, what I didn't remember is really the thing that shocked me most was how really funny it is. Like
It
the
is.
movie was like borderline hilarious. Just a lot of the phrasing. It's sort of done in that vaudevillian, almost Abbott and Costello kind of cadence. How they talk to each
Yeah.
other. I love Dorothy is very bossy. She's very bratty.
Hold on, time out. We are going to reframe that in the feminist way. She's not bossy, she's assertive. Thank you.
She's assertive, and it's funny because what I found most interesting because I know in the book she's supposed to be a child, like a very young child,
Yes.
and she's supposed to be a teenager in the movie.
Very interestingly, they originally wrote her to be 16 or 17. The original script had a subplot with a very innocent romance between Dorothy and Hunk's character, who ends up being the Scarecrow.
Mhm.
Um, and they tried that out for a little bit and it didn't work. So they pulled back and they took that she originally had this long flowing blonde wig, lots of makeup. They took that off. They put her in, the brown pigtails. They put her in a breast binder and a corset. And they attempted to make her look 12 years old. That was the goal they were going for. I do not think they achieved that. And I don't think, I think Judy had a gravitas that showed her age. So I think she comes across as the 16-year-old she was. And so they were attempting to bring her age back down, but to me it didn't read that way.
Yeah, and even if they did, you said with the breast binding and the different kind of things to her body, she has, I mean, for being 16 at the time, she has a grown woman face.
Yes, she does.
Like there was something about, of course, back then they always say people age differently. I mean, she looked like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Raiders, she looked like Jim Otto. He was the center for the then Oakland Raiders, but he was like,
Sports. Yes, I'm sports with you.
yeah, I can see all your football memorabilia in the back. But but I was so yeah, the movie was just really funny. The cadence, I like a lot of the wordplay. I think that's something that doesn't get a lot of notoriety, and they just have such great chemistry. It's
You really do. And they had all worked together before. Jack Haley and Judy Garland had done a film together. Burt Lahr and Jack Haley were actually close friends. They were each other's children's godparents. They Ray Bolger had worked with them before. The songwriters had written stuff specifically for Burt Lahr many times, which is why they actually gave him a second song. They loved writing for him. So they were familiar with each other. They had all worked together. And Ray Bolger, Burt Lahr, and Jack Haley were household names at the time, while Judy Garland was not. So she was the new kid on the block, actually. And which is funny because now if you went up to someone and asked them what they think of Ray Bolger, I don't think there are a lot of people who could tell you who he is. But they were very, very popular at the time, and they were actually the big names. And Judy Garland was the brand new kid starting out. And she had had successful films and radio appearances, but she was not a big smash hit yet. So this was her breakout role. And they did have great chemistry. And Ray Bolger and Judy Garland stayed friends for the rest of her life. And they built, there's a lot of rumor that they did not get along on the set, which is not true. They had really strong bonds. The only person Judy Garland expressed not being fond of was Jack Haley. He was a bit of a curmudgeon. He was miserable in his costume. Absolutely miserable. So yeah, I think they did have great chemistry. And I think the cartoon actually captured that, which is really one of the things I love about it.
Yeah, and we'll get to the cartoon. I'm just trying to pick your brain with everything right now. I've been
You do.
chomping at the bit.
Heaven for me.
So I want to just ask one more question though, because you were mentioning about a lot of the misconceptions. Is it the age, or what is it about the Wizard of Oz that so many people hear these rumors about? Because I've saw on your Instagram as well. You have, it seems like every other video is you dispelling the asbestos poppy fields, the hanging munchkin. There's always these misconceptions. What is it about the Wizard of Oz?
It's a perfect storm of because Judy Garland's life ended so tragically, I think there's a lot of fascination in terms of the lore there. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of latent ableism when we talk about the Munchkins. People believed those stories so readily about how rowdy they were and out of control, when the truth is that's a gross exaggeration. And there were a lot of injuries and mishaps on the set. That part of it is true. There was no oversight. The Hollywood studio system was a wild west of no government intervention. Nobody was watching out for child labor. Nobody was watching out for safety regulations. And this was a film that was experimenting with special effects that had not been done before. So they were inventing the wheel while riding on it. And they made a lot of mistakes and a lot of people got hurt. So I think it's easy for people then to believe all these outlandish things, because there were outlandish things that happened. But not everything you read on Google is true, kids. Be careful. Yes, we have access to all of the information in the universe at the end of your fingertips, but it's buried under misinformation. So do your research. Read books as well as researching on the internet.
Or listen to an Oz historian. This is the perfect example of why we need Oz historians. Exactly it.
So happy to pick up this mantle for sure. I have an entire list on my TikTok of I have an entire playlist just called Oz Myths Debunked, and it's like 300 videos deep at this point.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And so let's go ahead and transition here. So Wizard of Oz, you said you were about, was it 9 years old when you first discovered the movie?
I was 2 when I first discovered the movie.
2.
And actually, my fans on TikTok have helped me to conceptualize why it stuck so much at that point. And actually, having gone back and thought about it, so my grandfather died in 1990, and the 50th anniversary had just happened in 1989. So my grandmother had the VHS tape. Right after he passed, 2 weeks later, our house burned. So we were displaced from our house, and we had to go live with our grandmother while it was being repaired, who had just lost her husband. And while we were staying there, she showed us The Wizard of Oz for the first time. She had the 50th anniversary VHS tape, which I still have right there. And I was hooked. And I think looking back now, that trauma and upheaval is really what made it stick for me. It just makes me feel so comforted and so good. And I've never stopped loving it. I would finish the VHS tape, hit the rewind button, and start it right over again. It's just, it's my comfort place.
Yeah, and you're gonna like this segue. In 1990, the year the Wizard of Oz cartoon came out. Let's go ahead and take some comments really quick. We're actually starting to get kind of full here. I've been neglecting you folks. Sorry about that. All right, let's go ahead and look at. We have Lowell Lucas Jr. Howdy, Lowell. What are your thoughts on Return to Oz? I personally love it, especially the Gnome King.
I don't know if you can see my Return to Oz shelf right here. I've got 2 shelves of Return to Oz stuff. I adore Return to Oz. It's the closest thing to a proper adaptation of L. Frank Baum's novels that we have on film so far. It's the closest adaptation. And even the darkness, which I know people are kind of taken aback by, is, there is darkness built into the Oz books that isn't in the 1939 film, which does have dark moments, but the tone is very light. So I love Return to Oz. Thank you for the question. And the Gnome King is awesome.
And
and a little bit LGBTQIA plus, the way he rocks those ruby reds. Yes. Yes.
And there's something, I don't know if you're familiar with Don Bluth. He's
yes, of course.
Fievel goes, Fievel, American Tail, all those movies. But he had a really good point that kind of makes me think of Return to Oz. He says that a lot of his films were very dark, like All Dogs Go to Heaven. There was a lot of heaven and hell, a lot of loss, mourning. He says that for kids, a lot of these Disney movies have problems because you get to see these really happy moments, but the payoff doesn't equal what the tragedy is. So he's saying that you had to have somebody die in a movie if you want that jubilation that feels earned at the end, which feels kind of like Return to Oz. Like, there really is a lot of darkness, but those highs at the end of the movie and during when they make friends, when they really accomplish something, it feels earned. And that's something that a lot of The Wizard of Oz, and I think a lot of movies and kids shows in general, they don't earn that ending. They don't earn that happy feeling. And Return to Oz, I mean, you said it was dark, and it really is. I love the sands, the deadly sands, right?
Yes, the deadly desert.
The Deadly Desert. I mean, I love all that stuff. And when they escape something, you feel like, wow, that really was worth it.
And that was close. And actually, I would argue as well for the 1939 Judy Garland film. I think Dorothy's journey really is a journey of is a coming of age story, and no coming of age comes without pain. So Judy's film and the experiences Dorothy goes through, that I think the payoff of feeling at home and feeling self-actualized when you return I think that payoff is really, really satisfying.
Yeah, I mean it's just, I mean, like I said, I was rewatching it, and everything felt like it actually is a little bit of a scary movie, the original Wizard of Oz too. I mean, those flying monkeys when they actually kidnap Dorothy, that is actually a very terrifying scene. And I just forgot how everything looked. You just have it in your mind because you watched it, like I said, as a kid, and you think, oh, the monkeys were silly. They're not silly. They're just
No.
grown men. It's like Planet of the Apes almost, but blue.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So, getting to the Wizard of Oz, let's go ahead and take a couple more questions here. Marcus Blackwell, how did they accomplish effects like the Wicked Witch melting and the flying monkeys? Is there anything I can read or watch about behind the scenes of the film?
Hold on now. So, especially if you're interested in special effects, if you're interested in the behind the scenes of the entire movie, I would recommend The Road to Oz by Jay Scarfone and William Stillman. This is an amazing book. As you can see, I have it earmarked everywhere. It's an incredible resource. If you're interested in specifically the special effects, the MGM special effects master, Arnold Gillespie, actually did write a book, a memoir that was published after his passing. It's called The Wizard of MGM. And he actually, what I love about this book, he actually has his original order sheets and notes in the back. So if you're interested, for example, in those flying monkeys, look here. There's a whole order sheet here and reference for how that was accomplished, how much those effects cost, what they needed to accomplish it. The flying monkeys, by the way, they achieved that with a mixture of people in costumes on wires and puppets. And there are still a couple of those puppets out there that collectors have, not me. And they're the Wicked Witch melting, they put her in an oversized hat and an oversized dress, which they pinned to the floor. They shot up wind and dry ice, and they lowered her slowly into the floor, and she slowly like takes her dress off and like leaves the hat over where the trap door is. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, and we got one from Andrew DeFilippo. He says, hi.
Hi.
Rennie the Space Guy. The greatest adaptation of this story is, of course, the Lego version from the Toys to Life game they did. And that kind of makes me wonder, though. So do you focus mostly just on the television and the plays and the books, or do you actually go into the video game sphere or the cartoon sphere regularly?
I do go in regularly. I like what Lego did with it. It's very cute. And I hope Lego does more with Oz. I think we are lacking as collectors an entire Lego Oz set. We have minifigures, and the Lego Dimensions characters, but we lack a set. And I have a bone to pick with you, Lego. What the heck? Let's go. But yeah, I love video game adaptations. I love cartoons. As a matter of fact, you'll find TikTok in one of the Mickey and the Magic is it Mickey and the Magic Paintbrush or something like that, came out like 15 years ago. You'll find TikTok from Return to Oz in that. So yeah, I think I'm all about all things Oz are for me. I love anything Oz in any sphere.
And you're going to be happy for this. Marcus Blackwell says, I'm going to check those books out at my local library.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marcus. Please
the
do.
next Oz historian. You just
Let
created
me know
one.
what you think. They're everywhere. And I've met several, and I've gotten letters from kids who I am convinced will be picking up what I'm doing now for the next generation. They're out there. They're making themselves right now. And it's so wonderful because we need them. I don't want this to leave. I don't want to leave this behind and have it disappear. I want it to keep going.
And I agree with everything in that statement. I just cannot believe that kids are writing letters.
I know. I have a P.O. box, guys. Link in my link tree in my Instagram and TikTok if you ever want to write me a letter. But yeah, I get cards and letters all the time. And the thing that I hear the most is I felt othered in some way in my community. Oz made me feel connected. And That is such a beautiful thing.
All right, and we're gonna take one more question here really quick. We got Marcus. Marcus is just he loves all this Wizard of Oz. Or sorry, Lowell. Let's take a look. Have you seen the illustrated works of Oz by Thomas Blackshear? He's my mentor and has a love of the Wicked Witch.
Thomas Blackshear. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up and see if I have it in the archive here. So I'm sorry I can't answer that right off the top of my head, but I will look into it and let you know.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the cartoons. So, 1990, Deke Entertainment. Deke has worked on everything basically in the 80s and 90s. Strawberry Shortcake, Sailor Moon, Sonic the Hedgehog, and I'm sure other cartoons that don't start with the letter S, but those are the three off the top of my head. So, I was talking to you a little bit before, and you said that you actually watched this growing up.
I sure did.
So, you watched it as it was airing week to week?
I did watch it while it was airing, and then it was in reruns for a long time. I would say for like 3 or 4 years, it ran in reruns on various networks, and then it went off the air. And for a long time, and then so we had, does anybody remember video rental stores? So back in the day, you could rent VHS tapes, and I would rent this one all the time. This is the
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
OG.
I love that. And it's all shrink wrapped. I mean, I'm no collector, but that is a beautiful piece right there.
So there was a video rental store in our local Stop and Shop, and they had just this one, and it has 2 episodes on it: The Lion That Squeaked and We're Not in Kansas Anymore, or The Ruby Slipper Slip Up. And I went in and rented this like every week. And then that store shut down. And that was the last I saw of it for a very long time. And then one day we got a new premium channel on our cable called Toon Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And this was back in the day when you had on your television a TV guide that you could flip ahead and see what was coming on. So we had just gotten Toon Disney, and I had no idea what cartoons they had on it. And as official cartoon aficionado, I wanted to know. So I scrolled ahead on the TV guide, and at 4 a.m. on Sunday into Monday morning, they had the Wizard of Oz. And I was like, which Wizard of Oz is this? Because there are obviously more than one Wizard of Oz cartoon. But the description sounded very much like this show. And I was like, well, I have to see it. But I wasn't allowed to watch TV at 4 a.m., as you can imagine. And my alarm clock, I had this old-fashioned bell alarm clock, and if I had tried to set it, it would have woken up my entire household. So I was on a mission. I stayed up all night. I did not fall asleep. I stayed under my covers reading, and I woke up at 4 a.m., turned on the television. I used a VHS tape to tape it off the TV, and sure enough, it was this show. And I stayed up for 13 consecutive weeks and taped the entire series off of the TV.
Wow. And that must be, your parents must be mad. They don't want you staying up at 4 a.m., but they must be so happy you weren't out gallivanting, drag racing. I don't know why I think you grew up in the 1950s, like Greece.
I was only 12 years old or so, but yeah, I was definitely not. I'm a total nerd, and I'm happy to admit that I'm a total nerd. So I stayed up for 13 weeks, got the entire series on VHS tape. And then they stopped playing it shortly after. And I didn't see it again. I had those tapes. I rewatched them. But then one day I was walking through Rite Aid and I saw them on DVD. And I was like, wait a minute.
These things are drawn to you somehow. I don't know. I go to a Rite Aid and I see Die Hard, Die Hard 2, Live Free or Die Hard. You see The Wizard of Oz. You have a special gift.
And this DVD release is very strange. The menu is narrated by Inspector Gadget for reasons I don't know.
He actually did a lot of the Deke shows. They would have him do. He also did the Super Mario Brothers show DVD menus for some reason.
Side note: why haven't we gotten a dark noir adaptation of Inspector Gadget? We need one.
Oh, we have. It was Gadget Boy.
That's a thing.
Well, no, it's not actually dark. The second live action movie was a little dark. They had evil Inspector Gadget. I think it was the second movie, but they had Gadget Boy, which was just Inspector Gadget as a little boy. And then instead of Penny, they had an adult version of Penny, and they had the dog, and they had instead of Dr. Claw was a female.
I have to check that out. So the cartoon is one of those things that if I asked people about it, they were like, "No, I didn't see that growing up," but it stuck so much for me. I remembered those episodes beat for beat, and they're so wonderful. And what a voice cast! And I'm so excited we're getting into this.
Yes. Now let's go ahead because we have been setting up so long. I'm just fat. I could just listen to you talk about something I have no idea what I'm talking about for hours, which is basically what we're doing. But we'll go ahead really quick, get to the comments one more time. Let's take a look. Marcus Blackwell, I didn't know that the 1990 cartoon was popular enough to have a VHS.
Yeah, it wasn't, but they once it went off the air after one season, the only way then to make money off of it um is to sell the VHS tapes. And my parents, as the folks at the VHS rental store, did offer to sell them to us. That's how often we rented that. But my parents like, nah, that's okay. We'll just keep renting it. But they did merchandise this show in a very limited way. They released a lot of baby items. There were a lot of baby bottles and bibs and stuff like that. But it didn't take off the way that I guess you would hope, like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles took off and there's merchandise for everything. We were so robbed of action figures for this show.
So there were actually action figures from what I understand.
There were?
That's what I read.
If there are, I have never seen them.
I will have to find the article I found. I'll have to send it to you after.
Please do. I've never seen action figures for these. If they're out there, they're very rare because I've never seen them. But we still actually have people today making merch, fans today. Joe Shipaw, one of my favorite Oz artists, just made these beautiful keychains that you can get.
Those are lovely.
I got two of them because I was like, I know I'm going to pick one of them up.
Well, of course, when you're collecting, you have to have two everything, one to keep and then one to show off.
Actually, yes.
Trust me, I'm in the I don't have my camera on, but I'm in the same boat as you.
The good news is the art was preserved, so there are animated cells out there. I actually have one sitting right behind me. I don't know if you can see it, but so unfortunately they didn't merchandise this a lot, but the reason they put them out on VHS tape was to make a couple extra bucks off of it. So thank you for your question, Marcus.
And we'll get to one more question, then we're really going to get into the Wizard of Oz cartoon. So Lowell Lucas Jr., sorry, going to re-ask my question. Have you ever seen the wonderful Wizard of Oz anime series in HBO back in 1988? Whoops. Let's see. Hold on, folks. Technical difficulties. Oh. 1 minute, everybody. Hi, folks. We're working on getting the cameras fixed. Give me 1 minute, okay? All right, folks, we're having some trouble with Zoom. Give us about 5 minutes and we're going to be back.